Good evening. The Wednesday, March 9th, 2022 meeting of the Conservation Commission will now come to order. The first order of business will be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I just want to make sure that everyone on the call and video can hear us. Someone nod yes or something. No one's nodding.
We can hear you.
Okay, we'll take that as positive reinforcement.
Okay, great.
We're good here.
All right, thank you. The next order will be the approval of minutes from February 23rd, 2022.
I've read those minutes, and I move that we accept the minutes with one minor modification.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve as amended.
Yes.
Any further discussion? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. The minutes are approved. Notice of intent, 242-1822, 45 Catuit Street. Request to continue to 3/23/22.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second discussion. None. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that is unanimous. Continued. 242-1837, 1260 Salem Street. Request to continue to 3/23/22.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that one? None. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous as well. Small project, NACC number 291, 100 Crossbow Lane, high-tech windows and siding.
Alrighty. This project comes under category L, and it is consisting of working within the confines of an existing screened sunroom at the rear of the house. They're proposing to remove the existing decking, rails, screens, and 2 sets of stairs. Once removed, the decking material will be replaced with conservative decking material. Only 1 set of the stairs will be replaced, and that's at the north side of the sunroom. And they'll be replaced with 3x3 pressure-treated frame to meet code requirements on top of an existing concrete landing. No new footings are proposed for the project. No ground disturbance is proposed. The roof will be replaced with 2 skylights. Openings where the screens were will receive glass windows, and a new door will be replaced at the north side of the sunroom where the stairs will be rebuilt. Let's see. No equipment. This is manual labor. Dumpster will be positioned in the driveway, and our field inspector visited the site, confirmed that the work at its closest point is 65 feet from the BBW, and that's very conservative measurement. So we have an aerial up here. I've provided photos for you guys of the site, but I'll pull them up. I believe the contractor's on the line with us if you guys have questions for him. The only thing I would like to make very clear to the contractor and the homeowners is that none of this scope of work involves rehabbing the walkway, which is, old brick. If they want to do that, they'll need to come back, but that was not part of the scope of work. But I want to make sure that, one project scope doesn't creep. So I'd make it clear to the homeowners that that's not approved, and that would have to be under a separate filing.
Okay. Mr. Lynch?
If it were not for the roof, this would be type A, but because of the roof, it's another type of project.
Yeah.
The, if they wanted to include in their scope the walkway, would that change the aspect of this being a small project or not?
Potentially, because who knows what they want to replace it with. But that conversation never came up. I'm just pointing out that we have an older walkway that's got a lot of moss on it that, might be their next.
But there's no proposal in
But
front of
there's
us.
no proposal, and, I would rather them just come in separately for
Okay,
that.
I was on the edge of almost offering that now, but no, if it's separate,
I'm not.
because it's closer, then let's do
Yeah,
that.
I'm not comfortable.
Let's
right.
do that, okay, I'm all set, thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's a small project, and this is somewhat on the limits. I mean, no excavation or anything, but it is a small project, and maybe that should be a separate one. I agree with you, Amy. My comment on this one is more for you than the homeowner.
Okay.
I would ask these homeowners for small projects to submit their plot plan and maybe sketch something into their plot plan so that we have something that, I mean, we've got the GIS photo and everything, and we've got the 65-foot.
Okay.
And that's all verified, and that's all good.
No.
But, I think if you could encourage them to do that, ask them specifically to do it, I think these would get a little bit more uniformity in their submission.
Yep.
So, but anyway, other than that, I have no other questions.
Amy, are you satisfied with the page 3 in the package? Basically, what the project is, the description of the prep work, the roof work, windows and doors. Are you satisfied with that
Yes,
description?
I reviewed that.
So that's the job.
Yep.
And if it's not on this list, it's not the job.
Right, exactly.
Good enough. Okay, thank you.
What conditions do you want, Amy?
The pre-construction meeting, I don't think we need erosion controls, but we need a pre-construction with the contractor to go through what's expected. Dumpster for material disposal must be placed in the driveway, and a post-construction inspection to verify compliance.
Al, can I move that as an L with those conditions?
Other similar project for minimum, it qualifies as an L. It doesn't ask, they're not asking for any waivers.
Nope.
And, yeah, that qualifies as an L, in my opinion.
So moved with those three conditions.
And I would like to add a fourth condition, if you could, please. It says we're 65 feet away from the resource area.
Yep.
And given a work perimeter, it would not be unusual for the lumber company to stockpile the lumber outside of the work area. So we would say no stockpile of any construction materials within 20 feet of the wetland.
25 feet, okay.
Well,
Did I say 20? I meant 50.
With it,
Yeah.
okay, with it,
50,
okay.
50.
Even better, just a suggestion on that second condition, Amy recommended dumpster for material disposal to be placed on the paved driveway. Maybe the condition should be dumpster and
construction materials?
construction materials.
Okay,
Sure.
gotcha, yep.
So I'll restate that with those caveats.
Second.
Jack's got it.
Second.
we have an amended motion and a second. Any further discussion? Any abutters? No abutters, answer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Great, thank you.
You're all set, guys? Okay,
Thank
enforcement.
you very much.
Thank you for
Appreciate your time.
coming, thanks for coming.
We're down to enforcement orders on the agenda. Foster Street heating oil spill continued from 2/23/22. Good evening, sir. Thank you for being here. We're going to let Amy start off. You can ask any questions anytime you want or not. We'll put your hand up, we'll recognize you right away. I thought Amy, and then see where it falls from there.
Okay, so I think a good format for the meeting, I'll provide an update on events to date. Mike Sabulis, our third-party peer review LSP, is on the line. I will hand it to him for the technical evaluation of materials submitted, and then we'll go from there, okay?
Okay?
So, Commissioner, recall at the last meeting, you issued an enforcement order that took effect on the 26th of February when the emergency certification expired. You required a number of deliverables, including a source control plan, odor control plan, a 3-week look-ahead, daily daily reports of daily activities. The IRA, when they have it and when they're going to submit it to DEP. We required them to include VPH in their testing, additional booms upstream of the culvert, and additional boom and absorbance in between two booms downstream. So Clean Harbors installed the additional turbidity curtains and booms and absorbents on that Sunday. They submitted their control plan and odor plan on the Tuesday, the following Tuesday. GEI performed a review of that and has numerous comments, which I'll provide time for Mike to expand upon. GEI performed a site inspection on March 7th, which is Monday, and that report and photos from that site visit are in your packet. On Monday the 7th, Clean Harbors reported that a large amount of emulsified oil released from a melting piece of ice. They sent a crew that afternoon to recover it using pool skimmers and absorbents. On Tuesday, March 8th, Clean Harbors met with DEP staff on the site, unbeknownst to town staff, so we weren't a part of that and we weren't notified. Natural Heritage Endangered Species personnel contacted me on Tuesday, having just found out about the spill, considering its priority habitat. I provided them with information, and there is an emergency process through MESA for IRA activities and other cleanup activities, so they need to go through that. Let's see, DEP posted a release amendment form, I believe on, I think it was on the 7th, I think. And they, you know, it was sort of a rehash of the events and their observations at the time of the spill. Stating that majority of the material was contained on top layer of frozen ice with 3 or 4 inches of ice. Let's see. And let's see, in coordination with the vice chair, we contacted Mass Fish Wildlife to alert them and ask them not to stock, because that's a location of fish stocking, so they will not be doing that. So that's sort of the events.
That's the sequence of events, yeah. Let me just expand a little bit. So we talked about, last time we talked about the fish stocking that takes place annually on Mosquito Brook. Amy reached out to Fish and Wildlife regarding stocking, and then they still sent forward a notice online saying they were going to commence their stocking. So they've been, I think you've recontacted them.
Right.
Meanwhile, we got notice from Natural Heritage that this is an area of priority habitat that has been inundated with the oil. All priority habitat according to Natural Heritage. And the next in the package, I'm trying to follow the package here to treat. There is a source control plan that was submitted by Clean Harbors. I don't know if anybody from Clean Harbors wants to talk about their source control plan, or if they want us to just continue on.
I'd rather hear from Mike before we get into that.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to hear from Mr. Saboulis from GEI, and then Clean Harbors can respond to that if you want to. You don't have to speak, you can or not, whatever you want to do. We have your document here, dated February 28th, 2022. Mike Sabulis, can you, are you out there?
That's him in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Mike, you might be muted. There he is. You're muted.
I think you need to unmute there, buddy.
Yeah, switching around. Fun with Bluetooth in 2022. Love it so much. It's so great.
All right, Mike, we have you now. Amy just gave us a sequence of events. We have the document, the source control plan from Clean Harbors. Now it's your turn to give us your observations and recommendations, opinions.
Sure. I know, and I thank Clean Harbors for getting the source control plan and odor control plan over to us for review. Thank you for that. As the commission is aware, we have some back and forth going on. GE had some comments, and I know Clean Harbors is in the process of responding to them. With respect to kind of the overview where things sit, we are, by my count, about 7.5 weeks from the original release date. Obviously, control and containment has been the goal to date. I know Clean Harbors has worked with the town and with our suggestions to get additional boom and absorbent materials out there. As has been noted in our field observations to date, we have seen oil distributed throughout the wetland complex in previous site inspections up until in the March 7th date. We do agree with what has I believe was an observation from Clean Harbors today indicating that limited oil, or no oil rather, was observed out toward the trail crossing, excuse me. I agree with that. We were out there on Monday, and we can concur with that, so that was good to see. I think where we're at right now is we did see significant sheens, especially when sediments were agitated in and around the culvert. Given the timing from the actual release date and the containment actions that have been taken, it's our opinion that the drive to move towards understanding nature and extent and impacts to the wetland should move in earnest, in haste. It is coming up on a breeding season for the wetland, obviously. Wildlife and fowl are coming back. Benthic organisms are starting to come out of their hibernation. And as Amy noted and Mr. Manzi noted, this is an estimated habitat of rare wildlife. So I think it behooves everyone to move quickly in understanding the impacts and damages that have occurred to the wetland and figuring out remedies and how best to move forward. Let me stop there. Any questions or thoughts?
I guess we're interested in knowing. I will say I'm interested in knowing your observations, how you regard the sequence control plan. What is it lacking? If it's lacking, what do you recommend be done?
A lot of our comments, GEI's comments, and I don't want to belabor everyone with walking through everything, are looking for more clarifications on some of the responses. I think our biggest comments really come around understanding what the responsible party's plan is for evaluating nature and extent and performing remedies out there. So I think that's one of the things we would like to understand, and understand primarily the timing around that and how we're going to understand, again, the impacts and damages that have occurred from the release to the wetland complex.
Do you feel that there should have been some vacuuming done? Because
my understanding is there was some in Clean Harbors. Is Ken? I'm sorry, are you with Clean Harbors? Is that accurate?
Yes, Ken McDermott. I'm Keith Sullivan and myself are sitting in for Alan Walker. He had a family thing that he's down in Atlanta. So, yep.
Sure, just making sure my timeline is accurate as I kind of walk through things. I know vacuum excavation was done initially, and I know as of the oil, emulsified oil that was observed on Monday, I know Clean Harbor has moved to contain and remove that. It sounded like pool skimmers and absorbent boom were used to corral and contain it. I defer to the responsible party and to Clean Harbors on the best methods for removing it, and it sounds like they got the majority of it. and I'd love to hear more about how that went and what the actual volumes of oil were moved, if you can provide it this time.
Yeah, so on that, I'll defer to Keith because he was actually at the site.
Yeah, so Mike, I've just been to the site once. I only saw it on the 8th, which I guess is the day after that that our crew was out there recovering the emulsified oil. And really, at this stage, it may seem like, oh, you should be using a Vactor or using a vacuum truck. At this stage, you're really at the point where, manually corralling emulsified oil, using pads to mop it up, bagging it, using pool skimmers, that's really the standard. The vacuuming that occurred early on, I know I just went back through the IRA plan, which is going to be provided to the town tomorrow with the NOI. The vacuum excavation work, or the use of a guzzler at least, probably both on soil and also on the icy, snowy oil impacted materials. That was on the 24th, the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, and the 28th. And then also they had a mini excavator, probably mostly dealing with the road materials, because we haven't really been digging down in the actual wetland itself. There were 8 days of soil removal, basically from the road area. There is still some more soil removal that needs to be done up top. I don't know if you noticed the soils immediately above the culvert when you were there, but there's definitely some material up top that still needs to come out. And just one thing that wasn't clear to me, again, I've just been working on the NOI since Monday. Are we okay to remove that material that's up top, basically in the road? Can we proceed with that, or must we wait for the approval on the NOI before we can take that material out? I know we're not supposed to be going down in the wetland until we have the approvals. But what I saw on the 8th was a fairly windy day, so that would have a tendency to strip the sheen off and push it down on that very first boom. I saw maybe 15 or 20 square feet of broken up Phragmites and just a vague sheen. On the downstream side, again, there was no visible product. Didn't really see any, didn't see any accumulations of emulsified oil. There was some silver sheen. We definitely saw silver sheen between that first soft boom and the first hard boom. And then there was also some silver sheen down by the dog walk area. And then again, way down at the, I think it's called Lost Pond Road or Lost Pond Lane, there was also some a small amount of emulsified oil in with broken up Phragmites. So, I mean, at this point, really, the manual recovery is really the way that oil is going to be recovered. The oil that's in the soils and in the wetlands, that will be removed physically with a Vactor, but in the wet areas itself, we're not going to be using a vacuum extraction methods unless it's necessary.
Yep. And that's understood. And I think one of the questions that comes next is, when do you anticipate getting out and remediating soil and wetland sediments, and how are you going to evaluate nature and extent of impacts?
So, Mike, let me before Keith goes, let me just respond. So, because I don't know if you know, but so there's a formal immediate response action written work plan that Alan submitted to the DEP today. A copy of that will be provided to the Conservation Commission with our NOI submittal tomorrow. So, we recognize your concerns and we appreciate it. If you think there's an issue at the culvert, I mean, we're going to be going back. We've had to work through a property owner issue. There was an attorney involved, not our attorney, but that took a little bit. So what I would ask would be, if you can review that plan and any comments you have on that plan, we'll certainly work to address.
Yep. So on the IRA plan, Ken, I'm sorry, or
Yep.
or the source control, I think those will probably go hand in hand. I would
Yeah. Well, the source control is also, we've worked that component, even though we already provided it, that's also, I think, an attachment to the IRA plan. But yeah, I mean, the whole IRA plan is intended, first and foremost, aside from today, hopefully we're through with the snow and ice, which, obviously is a hindrance. So we can't be sending people out onto ice that may or may not be safe. So, and the snow issue, if you can't see where oil is, you have to wait to the melt to come. So the weather now is hopefully getting into a more favorable pattern. Any micro sheen that we're seeing on that water, again, in our experience, we've done a lot of spills like this. Sunshine for that micro residual sheen is your friend. And then, those emulsified pockets, again, relatively speaking, might be a few inches to a foot or so, square foot or so in area. So the work that they do by hand to get those out is just a lot more efficient than the use of a vector.
Oh, I'm not disagreeing with you, or the take on use of a vector. I think the place that I'm pushing on is I think at this point we've moved past sheen. The oil is distributed likely through the wetland complex to the extent it's going to, especially with the most recent melt where we saw all the emulsified oil. I know you guys did the best you could to get that up, so well done, thank you for that. But as we've noted over the past 7.5 weeks, oil and sheens have been observed throughout the wetland complex. From my opinion, that would mean that those oils and sheens, as melts have occurred and those attributed, have now migrated into wetlands, sediments, and soils. So that is kind of the next point of the impact. And from my perspective, that's where we get to nature and extent of contamination and understanding what those impacts might look like and understanding them, so whatever the remedy is going to be can be addressed appropriately and quickly. So my question again comes back to what's the plan and timeline for going out to address nature and extent of impacts to the wetlands, sediments, and soils?
Mike, let me chime in on that.
Yeah, so we've, Tony, are
Is
you
that
on?
Keith?
That's Ken.
Ken, I'm sorry, Ken. Joe Lynch, Conservation Commission. In that whole discussion, both between you, Ken, and is Mike your cohort there tonight?
Keith Sullivan.
Keith, okay. There was a bunch of presentation of things that were going to happen, but there was a question that came in there, and it was, should we wait to the NOI, or could we be doing that now? And I want to remind everybody, we issued first of all, we issued an emergency certification, recognizing the anxiousness of dealing with this as quickly as we could. When it was about to run out at the last meeting, because it expires in 30 days and you can't extend it, we went so far as to issue an enforcement order. It was always our intention to get the source of the problem out, regardless of that impact, and then the NOI, in the longer run, will then assess those impacts, both from excavation and remediation, excavation and the spill itself, and the cleanup actions, and then ultimately put a plan in place to make a restoration of all those areas. So asking the question, again, now at week 7, should we be moving forward? What the hell is stopping you? You're under an enforcement order to be doing those things, and to suggest that you might want to wait till an NOI gets submitted and then heard by this commission and then order of conditions issued is not the timely response we're looking for. That's my take on it. Do you guys remember that?
I absolutely remember it.
So, and can I just dovetail that?
Amy, go ahead.
So I met on site with Pat, John Bergese, Mike Sabulis, myself, on March 1st, Tuesday, March 1st. And Pat said that they were going to take a vac truck and get those soils that were on top of the culvert out. That never happened. I don't know why, but it was obviously something that we were expecting and would probably be part of the IRA. So we're just a little baffled really baffled as to why it's taking so long to do even simple things like soil removal. That's easy to get at. So I don't know.
You can answer that if you know.
Yeah, well, there has been some soil removal. I'm not intimately familiar with the site. I don't know if the top of the culvert is on property that we were where we were denied access.
Can I
So
ask a question in terms of this property access issue?
Yeah.
Under an IRA, you don't necessarily need to get written permission to go clean up a hazardous situation. Is that correct, Mike?
It's not exactly clear. I think the Mass DP would expect that response actions are taking such to reduce the imminent hazard impact to human health and the environment, but to be honest, I think it's a little bit fuzzy gray.
Yeah, but let's resort to logic if we can. This commission a lot of times relies on logic. If you own property and for some reason you feel compelled to delay cleanup, are you not only making the matters worse in your own project? So I think it really comes down to salesmanship of Clean Harbors or whoever the responsible party is convincing these people it behooves you to let us get in there as soon as you can so we can clean this up. Trust, we'll issue some sort of an instrument that'll give us a requirement to clean things up and restore it when we're done. But, I mean, those types of conversations happen day 3, day 4, not 7 weeks after the release. And that's what concerns me is, even at the last meeting 2 weeks ago, we almost went so far as to say, since you've negotiated with the other abutter, what about us? Nobody's even struck up a conversation with the town seeking our authorization. Clearly, we're going to give it to you. To my knowledge, that still hasn't happened. Sounds like it still hasn't happened.
Not
So,
to my knowledge.
We're the largest impacted
A week or
landowner.
2 at a time, we're just
Right.
losing all this opportunity and therefore only exposing ourselves to a greater risk of a continued and prolonged release and prolonged impact. And if my tone sounds frustrated, it's because 7 weeks later, it seems like those easy things haven't been picked away yet.
Well, Joe, I mean, I respectfully, to a certain extent, I understand your frustration, right? At the same time, to say that we dragged our feet, I don't think it's the case. I mean, we had a spill, 640 some odd gallons was released. We've recovered close to 500 gallons of oil, despite snow, ice, winter conditions, and a property owner that didn't give us access. And we have attorneys on staff here at Clean Harbors. If a property owner says we can't, or a property owner's attorney denies us access, I mean, all the sweet talk, the commission, I'm sure, deals with attorneys probably
more than I do, and attorneys don't do things in a hurry. I'm not gonna speak to whatever negotiation may or may not have happened or the timeliness with the private third party. What I'm talking about is, I'm hearing a discussion going on of, should we dig in the wetland and wait to an NOI? Asking those types of abstract questions when 2 weeks ago under an enforcement order, we went so far as to say, if you don't have permission from the town, you will have permission from the town. And yet has not been asked for. We haven't, nobody's asked that permission. We're willing to grant it, but 2 weeks later, nobody's asked us that yet.
We already did grant it.
So I just want to make a clarification. I have a letter from Lawson and Whiteston, attorneys for 242 Foster Street, stating that my clients are cooperating fully with Hilton Oil in facilitating access to the property so that remediation efforts can move forward expeditiously.
What's the date of that letter?
February 7th.
February 7th.
So anyway.
Today's March 9th.
So,
Ken,
okay.
when did you first go out to the property, Ken? When did you first start working on this?
I have not been to the property. Alan, again, has been the LSP, but
Yeah.
I know that access, in February 7th, there was still access negotiations going on.
Okay. All right, so in the interest of time,
Let me ask a question. Have you seen GEI's response to the source control plan published by Clean Harbors? Have you seen GEI's response letter, release observation summary, and source controls dated March? I'm sorry, it's dated March 4th. Have you seen that? Ken,
I believe I saw responses to it, yes.
who responded to it?
Keith has been providing responses, and Alan Walker, who is the LSP of record,
Yeah.
who's not on this call, has been responding to it as well.
Okay,
But to go back to Mike's question, I mean, the IRA plan outlines a schedule which indicates that in the next week or two, we'll be doing additional soil removal. Also on the call tonight is a professional from Wood Environmental who we have retained to do or to begin the ecological risk assessment process. So he's on board. He's been to the site, and that that process has already been initiated.
this spill occurred on January 24th. Today's March 9th, and you're just initiating a process on the ecological damage of the site that's rated by Natural Heritage as a priority habitat site. I mean, what are we waiting for, buddy? You know, what?
No, we're
You guys are mailing this in. You guys are mailing
No.
it in. You haven't even been to the site. You don't even know where it is.
no, I have not. I'm not the LSP of
The
record.
LSP's been
Alan
there
has
probably,
been
yeah,
to the
Alan's
site.
been there maybe a half a dozen times in 9 weeks.
Well, Joe, if you, again, what I would ask, if you read the IRA plan, there's a day-by-day log of the times that Clean Harbors has been.
We have that. We've read the
And
log.
again, to go out, part of the ecological risk assessment process is going to involve sediment sampling. It's going to involve surface water sampling. But that sampling cannot occur when there's ice cover or snow cover that just prevents some areas from being accessed. And so to you, to keep referring back to say, well, nothing's been done in 7 weeks, just, I'm sorry, it's just not accurate.
On the ecological assessment, I think I want to make a distinction between what we would call a preliminary assessment, you know, what has happened up to this point. But I would agree with you that in the longer run, the only ecological assessment that makes sense is post cleanup. Now that everything's cleaned up, what have those impacts been, and what do we need to do to rectify those? So I think you're hearing some frustration from us that I don't think there's even been a consideration that there is wildlife impacts here, because there are, but we're not hearing that. But I fully recognize that anything that's of any value really ought to be done later on, once you know how much dirt you're digging out, what kind of plant habitat you're disturbing, and what sort of nesting areas we might be disturbing, and then from there, take that all under one big, grab, and come up with a restoration plan of improving or restoring all of those habitat concerns. So I think the preliminary assessment is probably overdue, but the long-term assessment is premature. I recognize that.
Joe, Amy just handed me her phone. She got a text from one of the property owners. It just came in now. I'll read it. I want it into the record. This is from the property owner that Clean Harbors has been saying they can't get an agreement with. It says, "Hi, Amy, we gave them an access agreement 1 week after the spill. They took a month to sign it." That's what we're talking about. And that's the property owner, and that's direct testimony from the property owner, and that's going into the record. You guys are mailing it in. there's no sense of urgency by anybody but us, and you're the responsible party.
Well, the access agreement was established between the property owner and Hilton Oil. So Clean Harbors didn't sign up the access agreement. Hilton negotiated it, and there were lawyers involved. So I don't have it in front of me, but if you give me the opportunity, I will get the date of the signed agreement, and I will provide that.
You can.
Okay.
Amy, where are we
Thank
going from
you.
here?
Okay,
Because
so-
this is starting to,
No, yep, okay, so,
If you, again, we have, Tony, who is our risk assessor, he's on the call tonight. If you want him to just, conceptually walk through the process of the ecological risk, he's here. I'll leave that up to you.
I'm going to hear from the rest of the commission right now. Thank you. Mr. Lynch,
Okay.
any more?
so,
Yeah, I want to point out, because we keep using the term responsible party in a very deliberative way. We all know it's Mr. Hilton. In my opinion, he's been very, very cooperative. He is a victim of a bad driver who works for his company, and he's been on board. I think he did what he needed to do, is hire the most available professional who's known in the business to be able to clean these things up. He, I believe, has done everything he needs to be doing, and I think is every bit as concerned as we are about getting this done timely. But my concern and frustration is we're not seeing that from the firm that he hired. That's my concern.
I think that's obvious, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say that though, because we have the responsible party sitting right here, with a real grim face
But we're
that knows how important this is.
We're listening to direct testimony from the people that are supposed to be getting it done. And the only thing they can do is blame the weather and blame the lawyers.
Yeah,
So
but
far,
when-
that's what I've heard.
But when the responsible party does the right thing and goes out and rings a doorbell and contacts a neighbor and says, hey, look, we got a problem, let's work together, and he was able to, from what I just heard, was able to do that in a pretty timely manner.
Yeah.
That's exactly the sort of things we're looking for. How it doesn't carry over to Clean Harbors as quickly as that or as smoothly as that, and here it is all this time later, and we're still talking about what sort of permission they may or may not have. It's just, in my opinion, it's just ridiculous. It's a waste of time.
Let me.
May I step in, please, Keith Sullivan? So recall, Alan has been doing the day-to-day management, and he asked for some assistance in preparing the NOI, which is due tomorrow. And so when I was on site on, must have been Tuesday, the 8th, I was with Pat McGrath. He's been the field service foreman. And Pat had said to me that they were planning to do the factoring work up top there, right over the culvert. And so, I was, considering we're in this NOI process, I was not aware that he may have already had a plan scheduled to remove that material. So that's why I brought that up in the meeting tonight.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know the field service schedule.
Okay.
So I just want to get that straight. So it's not, I may not have been aware of someone else's schedule.
Okay, thank you. Let me just go through the other commissioners here, and then if there's more questions, we'll field them back to you. Just stay with us. Mr. Maben.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to, actually, continuation of Joe's statement of frustration with Clean Harbors on this project, and to go back through the timeline a little bit to start that, which is we issued an emergency certification within 24 hours of the spill. That gave you permission to start cleanup, and you did. You started cleanup. You sucked up a bunch of oil, and you removed a bunch of yards of soil as well, contaminated soil. I don't have the numbers, but suffice it to say that you took some immediate response. But it's really slowed down since then. We've had I guess we've had a guy out there every day, but he's not been out there every day. I'm talking about Pat from Clean Harbors. I know Mr. Walker hasn't been out there very much at all. He admitted to that. And frankly, not a whole lot has happened. As Al stated, it's been blamed on the lawyers and on the weather. And there has been weather. but you did have permission about a week from, well, 2 weeks from the spill to access the property. And still, we notice slow progress. Then I look at the source control plan, and the source control plan says that you don't feel it's necessary to excavate sediment and soils that are under the water. You don't feel it's appropriate to minimize the odors that are coming from the sheen. And I think that's a concern because these obviously are hydrocarbons, which are known to be in the general class of carcinogens. And I understand that the neighbors may have, I understand the neighbor's problem with that. So now there's a reluctance to control odors. And then I was there on March 1st for the site inspection, and I heard Pat say that he was arranging for a vac truck to excavate soils from the roadside, which I believe is in the right of way of Foster Street anyway. And that hasn't been done. And then I see the ultimate plan of action is to have natural, I'll read it directly, natural attenuation activities to dissipate the residual oil, as an end result. Which it sounds like you're going right down the list saying, I'm not going to take the soils, I'm not going to take the wetland soils, I'm not going to take sediment, I'm going to rely on natural attenuation. And when I said I was going to suck up soils from the roadside, you didn't do it. So that is my reason for frustration. When you had authorization to start within 24 hours of the spill, where you had authorization to enter the property within 2 weeks of the spill, and your control plan, frankly, I think is very weak. And I know, and we actually received an opinion from another LSP that reinforced that statement that I just made, that it's a pretty weak response. That's the reason for our frustration. And those are all facts of this case that are indisputable. So that's all I have to say. I don't know what we have to do to make you take action.
Well, we're going to get there. Mr. McDonough.
Yeah, I mean, I think Clean Harbors hears all the frustration here. I'm not going to go through it all over again, but this is, I think, the third meeting where we've seen disappointment. It had been with Mr. Walker, and now it's just two more people that know even less about the project than him, who we have in front of us today. So I have very little faith in this cleanup effort or the organization doing it.
David?
So this comes late in terms of the town team's discussion about the fact that the town would have to sign a notice of intent for work on its own property. And whatever order of conditions is issued has to get recorded, which is against the deed of the owner of the property. And technically, the owner of the property becomes the responsible party for compliance with those conditions of the order. So it came clear to us that requiring a notice of intent with the resulting order that the town would be responsible for is not advisable. So what I'm going to strongly suggest, and the town team strongly suggest, is that we continue with the enforcement order path.
Who's going to go? is that whatever,
Right.
the notice of intent is simply the vehicle by which to file something. We already have that, it's our
Right.
enforcement order.
Yep.
And whatever it is we would consider as far as their actions, the impacts,
Right.
would ultimately be enumerated as additional conditions within that enforcement
right.
order that's going to be amended from time to time.
Yep, that's right.
And so I think, don't want to get tangled up in the bureaucracy, the actual recording the NOI, it really is just bureaucracy. What we're really looking to do is use whatever legal mechanism we have, enforcement order is that, to get this project stabilized, cleaned up, and then remediated. And we can do that through an enforcement order for an extended period of time.
Right, that's right. And to dovetail that, you know, our third-party LSP, Mike, has, you know, impressed upon us that they are beholden to the MCP, which requires a whole host of investigation, testing, monitoring, to substantiate any claims they have that the site is clean. So it's not, you know, it's not just our enforcement order. They've got MCP and they've got DEP that says you're responsible, and if they handled it a certain way that created problems for themselves and dug a deeper hole, then that's just the way it is, and they'll have to, you know, figure it out and follow the MCP
But I'd add,
through,
our-
chase that all that way.
Our property is the loser in that situation.
Right.
When we don't prevent further contamination,
Understood.
we're the loser. It may be more expensive to clean it up, but our property is the
Yeah,
loser.
and, you know, if 28 years of experience on this commission hasn't served me well enough, what I've learned above all else is DEP is not always our best advocate for the things that are important to us. You know, they're out there, and just because they're the overseeing body, I've seen factions of DEP on the wetland side fight between each other. Never mind, you know, hazardous release group versus environmental, they just simply don't agree. If we're interested in protecting our resource areas, it's incumbent upon us to do that.
Okay,
I have
so-
no faith in relying on someone else to do that on our behalf.
All right, so it sounds like the one thing that we should work on right now, we, the commission,
Yep.
is reconsidering our instructions to Clean Harbors and to the applicant to file an NOI. We don't want an NOI, is what I'm hearing.
What we want is, we want the project filed.
Yeah, but I'm
just
saying-
simply not using an NOI form.
So, understood. So, but we gave specific instructions to prepare an NOI.
We did.
It sounds like that needs to be reconsidered right now. Well, I heard Amy very clearly. We're the landowner, we're the affected landowner. We do an NOI, we're hanging it on ourselves.
Yeah,
Okay.
no intention to do that.
Okay, so let's come up with an action plan that we can give to the parties in front of us right now, so that we can continue the restoration and cleanup.
So let me, for discussion, I'm not making this in the form of a motion yet. So what I'm hearing that we want to consider is to amend the existing enforcement order to strike the language with file an NOI and replace it in its stead, to file all supporting documentation so that the commission can evaluate impacts to the resource areas and issue conditions that will be appended to the enforcement order moving forward. That's what we want to do, I think. How we do that, I think, is we want to work that language out.
Well, let me just jump in real quick. If you go to the March 4th letter from GEI, and you go to page 2, paragraph 2, findings and recommendations, source control plan. I think there's some pretty good ideas in there from somebody who is qualified to make recommendations as to what should be done. Maybe we should start following that script that's being proposed by GEI. We shouldn't be asking Clean Harbors what we want them to do, what they're gonna do. We should be telling them what to do through this type of document based on our expert.
7 points.
And that's I think that's where we gotta start. I think that's the most accurate way. I don't think anybody can question the expertise of our LSP. he's got more time out at the site than their LSP does, and his findings and recommendations on source control, I find,
So I think source control speaks only to the further migration of pollutants or the removal to do that.
which we don't.
I think we need,
And odors.
But which we don't even know the extent of it. One of the
but it
things I
stops
asked,
short of impact assessment.
well, one of the
Right.
things I asked for at the last meeting was, I want to know the extent of the flow of the oil in the brook. It started on the 24th of January. We're now on the 8th of March, and we don't know how many miles downstream that oil went. We really don't. We know that they have booms and devices to remove as far as Lost Pond Lane. Lost Pond Lane is not even a mile away from our property. This has been flowing at a high rate. The water's big there. I don't think anybody can argue that. This has been flowing at a high rate. It's probably all the way down the Ipswich River into their ecosystem down there. We need to at least try to figure out how far it went so we can do the right thing and advise towns downstream what they need to look for. They don't even know, a lot of them don't even know what's happened here. And we can count on DEP to do nothing. DEP, the most we got out of them was a meeting with Clean Harbors, which we weren't invited to. They held a meeting without even letting us know they were having a meeting, and we're the principal players here. So, again, that's all I need to hear. I don't need any more than that. And by the way,
So do you want to pick at this enforcement order bit by bit? So source control first,
I think we got to
and
follow.
not talk about impact assessment at all until we
No,
know
I-
more about it?
I think there's got to be impact assessment right now, yes. There has to be. We know that we have a priority habitat. We need impact assessment on the property for the priority habitat. We already know that the nesting species are already trying to nest. Anybody that wants to spend a day sitting on the side of the road by the Foster Farm property can see and hear waterfowl, red-winged blackbirds, all kinds of animals that nest there every year, trying to nest. The stream is not going to be stocked. We have to have it posted, no fishing, keep out hazardous area. We have to do our diligence to keep people from walking out there and getting covered with oil. We have a lot to do. Nobody else is going to do it now. It's obvious to me nobody's going to do it. It's obvious to me Clean Harbors
What
or
I'm
the
saying is if
LSP, they're not going to do anything.
we're about to consider striking any reference to NOI from the enforcement order.
We should.
We then need to be very specific on
Yes.
what we want in
That's
that
right.
enforcement order.
Right,
Okay, so
right.
I agree with you, so go ahead and take your
So I
best
think first
shot.
and foremost, I think the source control plan is a good first step.
Okay,
And I believe that a preliminary ecological assessment
Yes.
needs to be done.
okay, so,
And then within, and with
Yes.
time to
So-
be determined,
That's right.
within X number of days after the cessation of excavation of materials, that they then complete a final ecological impact. And given the fact it's in priority habitat, that would also have to have the file with natural heritage, right? You would have to file that with natural heritage. Absent an NOI, they can file that individually.
Yeah,
no, I think if.
Because we want them to be a player to what then
They're already
becomes.
a player. They've already given notice.
So what we want then, though, is that assessment to be evaluated by us and by them, to then determine what is the rest, what is it do you need to do? Do you restore? Do you have to create new ecological habitat areas because this was, non-recoverable? That's yet to be determined, but I think once the assessment's made and a plan of how to restore it is made within a certain time frame, then we require a slice of time yet to be determined to actually carry that out, and then beyond that, to monitor its success.
Okay, so your initial point is right on. What we should do is give Amy the information right now today that we want done in the next 2 weeks. Or maybe even the next 3 weeks. We're gonna give it that the enforcement order needs to have right now.
I think we
Forget the notice of intent. We'll work off an EO, and we're gonna authorize them to move to work right now, and the EO is expressly giving consent to access our property.
But the source control plan as proposed by Clean Harbors is inadequate. I think it needs to be, I think it
Augmented.
needs to be supplemented with the 7 points
That's,
from the
that's,
GEI letter.
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, the findings and recommendations, source control plan. That's got to be our plan of action, I think.
I agree. That's exactly what we want. That's what we asked him to do. He gave it to us. He did all the work for us. It's right there. Annex it to the enforcement order.
So if I heard that an
I mean, real
NOI,
quickly to the commission?
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tom, sorry. We're talking about you. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. And I think it's an important clarification here that the MCP primarily deals with soil and groundwater, not sediment and surface water. So when we begin discussing ecological risk assessment, and this is just to help through the process, that evaluation of risk in sediment and surface water is going to be driven by a preliminary risk assessment is a way to look at it. But those points of evaluating and testing sediment, soil, surface water in the impacted wetland area are what's going to drive that risk assessment, which will determine cleanup. And I'm happy to pass it to Tony if he wants to fill in a little bit more, but that's kind of my take and the reason for the use of the word risk assessment, because it's not traditional soil or groundwater as it's managed in the MCP context.
Yeah, Mike, I'd be happy to say a few words about that process. The MCP in section 40.0995 in the regulations lays out the approach for conducting an ecological risk assessment. And it's done in a two-part process. First is called the stage 1 environmental screening, followed by the stage 2 environmental risk characterization. The stage 1 screening is very simple in that you compare your maximum concentrations that you've detected in surface water and in sediment to risk-based, no effects screening level concentrations. These are concentrations that Mass DEP in some cases has derived themselves. In other cases, they come from other scientific sources such as US EPA ambient water quality values or various EPA sediment benchmark values that are representative of concentrations that are believed to be non-hazardous. So if you're at that concentration or below, you do not have a significant ecological risk. If you do have a maximum concentration above the surface water benchmark or above the sediment benchmark, you proceed to stage 2. And that is a little bit more detailed site-specific process. Typically, the stage 2 will consider things like toxicity testing, community assessments, background characterizations, to better understand what exactly is happening at the site and whether there is a potential impact or an observed effect. And so the process that we will follow, which has actually begun, we've already collected a round of surface water sampling. We have been impeded by the ice and by the snow cover. When we do these investigations, we really like to bias the samples so that we're going after where we think the contamination has occurred. When the ground is covered and we can't see staining, we can't even see where the flow path is. If the water's frozen, we don't know if we're standing over mud or hummocks that will develop later on, or if we're over more of an open channel. We don't really want to go blindly into these areas. We're not sure what we're going to get. We're not sure going to be sure of the data quality or what is really represented. So now that the site is thawing out and we can see those very important features, we'll be able to target where we think the contamination is and then be able to contrast that with a background condition. And we'll be able to take that information and use it in the Mass DEP process. But we've begun that. The next step now is to collect another round or two of samples, surface water co-located with sediment samples, and we're developing a plan that not only investigates the stream channel, but the edge of where the water is, to characterize, for lack of a better term, a bathtub ring, where the oil may have spread out during high flows, or may have been pushed out by the ice. We're going to capture that, but unfortunately, we have to follow the process that Mass DEP has laid out in the MCP, and it's not geared towards speed.
But if tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds to me logically that source control is step one, and risk assessment follows from that. Is that the logical sequence?
I would agree with that.
Okay. Well,
Yep.
we were working on the source control, and then we just got off on a risk assessment tangent. So I think we had some decent direction on what we were going to do for source control. We had the original document from Clean Harbors, and then a rebuttal of 7, or actually an addition of 7 points that clarified more what our source control program should be. So, I mean, I don't know if the commission may have clarity already on where we stand with source control before we move on to risk assessment. So could we stay there for just a minute and figure this out?
Yep.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Tony?
Tony, the last name is Rodolakis, Rodolakis.
Thank you.
So on the source control plan as mandated by the enforcement order, do we want to just add these 7 points? Because, I mean, they're pretty clear.
Does that make sense, Mike?
That was my idea.
So, if they were prepared to submit an NOI as early as tomorrow, I would say it would be reasonable to put a deadline for that source control plan to be submitted no later than Monday.
We could, why don't we just say what it is in our enforcement order?
So if I could just weigh in again real quickly, these things don't, at this point in time, don't exist separately.
Okay.
Containment strategies have been put in place, the boom systems, and that would be kind of primarily your source control, along with excavation, removal, vacuum, ponding, pooling, skimming, all the things that have been done to date. Where we're at right now, in my opinion, this process is coupled with maintaining those systems is starting to evaluate impacts, that's nature and extent. So I know risk assessment seems like it might be further down the path, but these things are actually hand in hand, because now what you're trying to evaluate is the source, the things have been done to the extent they have been done. Containment has been put in to the extent it's going to be put in at this point. Now I think it's really pertinent to understand impacts to the wetland, which is where Tony and his team jump in and, help us understand where oil and where petroleum residuals have come to be and how they are affecting the resource area. And I think
Mike,
those
but
things actually
I think
come hand in hand.
I think to make the structure of the enforcement order work efficiently is, I think we want to package each of these separately. They can't happen lockstep. They can happen in immediate succession, sequence to the prior one. So I think we want to deal with the source control first, the assessment second, by way of discussion, and the timing can be closely tied together. And then ultimately, once all this work is done, a final, I'm not going to use assessment, but a final recommendation of what remediation ought to be carried out. And I think those are the three, at least those 3 packages that make sense at this point. Those are the things we would have typically looked at if this was an NOI.
And I don't disagree with that. I think that path works really well. I guess where I'm coming from, and I apologize for the confusion, is the source can plan as it's laid out. It kind of discusses about response actions that have been performed, oil removed to date, and then jumps to kind of discussion of weather conditions and the natural attenuation as a factor. So it kind of misses that step of evaluating nature and extent, in my opinion, to making that determination that natural attenuation is the appropriate path at this point, because in my opinion, there's not enough data to support that. Understanding the difficulties of working in these environments. So that's why, and I apologize, these seem to be kind of blended because that's how they've been framed out in the source plan. So that's kind of the framework that we're working in currently. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and so we have to find a way to structure it onto the enforcement order so we can get it going, hit the ground running tomorrow. We want the enforcement order to be the commanding document as a result of everybody's observations with regard to an NOI. I think you agree with that also, right?
it may make sense at this time with the with the submission of the IRA plan to maybe adopt things similar to the rather the plan of the MCP, which is assessment, evaluation, or remediation. We can certainly look at that as an aside, but that might be the appropriate framework to follow to make sure things are happening and the commission kind of lines up with the requirements of the MCP. That might be worth considering.
So without us hammering out specific words, because I don't, first of all, I'm reluctant to do that, other than give you guys benchmarks to start from and milestones to achieve throughout this enforcement action. If you think that the source reduction plan drafted by the folks under the MCP, and then your review of that, if that can be parsed out into those two separate elements, and have them present that to us. Because we want to receive documents and cite them in the enforcement order. I do not, and I will not, sit here and dictate or enumerate within an enforcement order specific things to do. We're not going to dictate means and methods. Not our job. The experts are going to give that to us. You're going to review them on our behalf. Amy will review them on our behalf. And then ultimately, we're going to vote to kick them into the enforcement order. That's all we're going to do. So if you think that there is an overlap between these two discussions and to separate them out from assessment and source control, then do that with the submission.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so where are you, Amy?
I'm not sure.
All right, so
Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
we're amending.
An enforcement order kind of says, do this, take care of this problem that we know.
That's what we're
this
doing.
violation. Okay.
That's what we want to do.
But we did that 2 weeks ago,
Right.
or thereabouts, right?
But we want to we're striking the NOI portion now, and we're going to continue with what we want them to do on the site via the enforcement order.
Right.
That's so
And
we just simply have to tell them what goals and objectives do we want met in the enforcement order right now, tomorrow.
Goals and method, means and methods
Joe-
excluded.
We're not. Joe's right. We're not
Yep,
going to. We're not
right.
going to issue means. Sure.
Yeah, I think, well, they were going to bring in an NOI tomorrow,
Right.
right? I mean, is anybody interested to see what was supposedly contained within
I'll
that
take
document?
whatever they have.
Even though we're not going to call it an NOI? I mean, it's not going to be, it won't be filed, but it can be certainly provided to us.
It can be a draft plan of action if they want to call it a draft plan of action, but we're not going to, based on the opinion you got from the legal minds here in town, we're not going to record an NOI against ourselves. So,
Perhaps we could refer to
But if
that or an amended action plan
if they have
in the new enforcement order.
If they have language that would have come forward in the NOI that we can use as language in the EO, I would be agreeable to that. We just don't have it here tonight.
Well, I think adopting the 7 points in GEI's letter makes sense.
Start there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
But I heard Mike say he wanted in addition to what's listed there, he thought starting the assessment process made sense too. I heard him say that. Did I hear you right?
is that right?
Sure.
That's correct. And if the IRA plan has been submitted, it might be worth requesting the timeline. And I know the commissioners were requested previous look-aheads for implementing the next phases of that record in the IRA plan. I haven't reviewed it yet, and along with timeline and sampling plans that are going to be developed for the wetland areas. I think
Yep.
the commission may want to.
I think that's an excellent
reviewing
idea,
those.
and this is the right time to do it.
Yep.
Right now.
Okay.
I like it.
There's a couple other things I want to add to the enforcement order. Require that they notify us within 24 hours of any meeting with DEP or any other agency or butter. We need to be informed of that.
Well, let me help you rephrase it. We need to be notified of any meetings, any and all meetings that are held with respect to this project, specifically
Yep.
the town's property.
Okay, within 24 hours.
I mean, that's,
Yeah, so not just DEP, don't, why limit it?
That's right.
no, but I mean, it
Yeah.
was.
We get
it
elected
was-
not to
it was
go to a
Clean-
meeting.
Clean Harbors
Okay.
and DEP that had the meeting and didn't notify Amy, which, I'm gonna refrain what I think of that.
They need to contact Natural Heritage immediately.
Well, Natural Heritage has
For
already
Mesa process.
said that they're in, right?
Yeah, but they need to make FaceTime with Natural Heritage.
I agree.
They need
That-
to reach out.
So
They need
that's,
to do
okay,
that.
yep. Yeah.
To review plans.
Right, and whatever process Mesa has, they have to follow that too.
I think it was something about a MESA.
Yep. They need to post, they should be posting no fishing, oil spill, or
Yeah.
hazardous material cleanup and process
There
for
have,
us.
we've got to get warning signs out there because people go
Right.
out and hike out there and fish.
So-
We gotta find a way to warn them and exclude them.
Right,
We've
so
already
Clean
told them
Harbors,
that,
ask Clean Harbors to do that,
Yes.
all right. and
Like-
have
Part of
it
the
in
enforcement order.
Yep,
This is all part of the enforcement order.
yep.
Yeah. I think we agree on
And
that.
I'd like to coordinate where signs should go. so
Well, everything
we
should
can
be,
coordinate.
everything should come through you.
All right. All right, so adopting GEI's 7 points.
The,
So I got a question for Mike and Tony.
But then,
Is Tony still on the line?
then it
Yes,
does-
Yes.
So on this assessment that's gonna start, is it limited? I think you had made some reference to the limits of where that would be done, the areas where the releases were and the ones that were most prone to risk for further impacts. So does that have any specificity of how far downstream we might be looking, or it's yet to be determined?
Keith, you may want to address that because that's more of a nature, an extent issue, but basically, we would be looking at an area until we meet either local conditions or background or a concentration at which there are no significant effects.
All right, so as a layman sitting here at the table where I sit, you start in an area, you find there's a problem, you go a little further downstream, you find there's a lesser problem, but still some. You go a little further downstream until you leapfrog down to the point where you find a level that's no longer at risk, therefore assuming there is no further risk downstream. Is that the approach that would be
Yes.
used?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
all right, Amy, I'm
Yep.
getting ready to,
Yep.
How do we address the risk assessment part of this enforcement order? Maybe,
What was the acronym you used? You're under statute that requires you to do this in a certain way under certain time guidelines, right?
Yes, it's under the Massachusetts Contingency Plan, which is 310 CMR 40.0995.
so when would that process begin?
I think we say that.
It's
to
already been
conduct a
It
risk
has
assessment
begun.
in accordance
yeah,
with.
it's
Okay,
been-
all right, so,
So Tony, do you have sort of like a written action plan or something in writing that would give us a feel for your approach or
what
what you're gonna do, step 1, step 2, rough time frames, stuff like that?
I've been talking with Alan on a fairly regular basis over the past week, putting the flesh on that type of a plan, and he's working on putting together a written approach.
Okay. ETA for that? Do you have any feel for that? Well,
That's Alan who's not here. Okay.
when that would be ready, that we could ask,
Well, this
Ask for
is
it.
the same Alan that's given us no information, right?
Well, maybe for the purposes of our enforcement order, we say draft such an impact assessment
action plan or whatever.
action plan, yeah, by date certain.
In accordance with,
Well, he's following the CMRs.
With-
He's
yeah.
already, he's following the CMRs.
Exactly, in accordance
in
with.
accordance with that citation. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah, because
exactly.
we can't,
MCP.
yeah, exactly. That okay? Can you do that for us?
How fast do you think that will be ready? I guess that's what we're trying to figure out.
It really depends on the data that come back and how far down we have to go. And then past the initial screening, what other types of studies we need to conduct.
Have samples already been taken and submitted for analysis?
The first round of samples have been taken, submitted, and analyzed. Yes.
Can we get that report?
We have,
I think we have it.
Do we have it?
think they're in here.
I don't,
I apologize if we have it. I wasn't aware that we did.
Well, I'm not sure what, actually, we have
there were
some,
soil
we have some
samples.
results, I'm not sure what we have.
Yeah, we don't have the report that this gentleman's talking about. He's got a first series of tests that have been completed. We have no information on
I
that.
believe at your last meeting, Alan Walker conveyed the results of those verbally to you. I don't know if he submitted anything already.
I can assure you,
Oh, all right.
he may have, he may not have, but I can assure you, we have no documents.
I don't
think it's
believe we've
attached
received
to-
anything with respect to sampling of surface water or sediments or soils in the wetland area.
Say that again, please. Say it again.
I do not believe we've seen that data yet. What I would,
There's the NOI that, again, that we prepared that, whatever we give you guys tomorrow. Again, the IRA plan has about 169 pages total, and there's all the data that's been generated to date is in that plan.
oh, that's good.
And we're gonna get that tomorrow?
We will, yes, we'll give you hard copies tomorrow, and a copy's already been electronically filed with the DEP as well.
Okay.
So there's our risk assessment then.
Okay.
That's the start of it
Okay.
anyway.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
No, yeah, it's not, just to clarify, it's not the risk assessment, as one of the commissioners alluded to earlier. Again, the assessment process is an iterative process, so it's the very beginning stages of that process.
if I could make a suggestion to the commission, is to request that sampling plans be provided for review.
Sampling plans?
Sampling plans
Sampling
and schedules be provided to us? Or
So
just
what does
the
that
plans?
mean? Do you want locations of where sample is intended to be taken? Is that what you
Yes.
mean, or? So you're talking about a graphical item as opposed to a spelled out prose
I
description?
think, what I've seen for other similar situations is, the LSP would have a kind of concept plan of where they plan to investigate initially and how they plan to proceed. I think that it would be good for the commission to see that information prior to investigations being performed.
So
they
Michael,
can plan accordingly.
Michael, so if I understand it correctly, a sampling plan would give you the approximate date, time, and location of the samples?
Yes, it would be essentially be an investigation plan.
So-
It doesn't have to be anything super formal, but a rough outline of what the plan is, where they're looking, rationale for testing,
Yep.
that sort of stuff.
Yep, I got it. Okay. So we're requesting that. I guess, Amy, you're gonna have to
Yep.
make that request in
Yep.
writing via email.
In the EO,
In the EO, put down the sampling plans,
Sampling
providing the
plans.
sampling plans. Yep, okay.
okay,
All right. All right,
right.
we've come full cycle on this.
all right,
I think that enforcement order is gonna be,
lengthy.
any questions of us,
Did
Mr.?
we have,
A record setter.
so what did we have for fines? Anything was tied to a particular date? Was
Well,
it?
they were
For
put- they were
NOI
tied to,
submittal.
they were tied to the date to file the NOI.
So that's exactly my point. Is
So
do we need to
we need to-
modify that discussion?
We need to revoke that, because we don't want the NOI.
Right.
Every legal mind we've talked to said, don't do it. So you don't have to hit me with a bat twice. We should, part of our motion tonight to amend the EO should be to revoke that and revoke the fines. And
then
I think
add it.
it's time for somebody with a keen mind to offer a motion.
Do I dare say so moved?
Since I'm sharing it, I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion and the second that's before us? I hear none. Any abutters? I hear none. All those in favor, say aye.
Just before we do that, does Mr. Hilton have something to add to the discussion?
I asked,
Okay, okay.
I did ask him, he's,
I'm all set,
Yeah.
sorry.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion for the amended EO passes. And we'll be back here again
March 23rd.
March 23rd. We're gonna continue to March 23rd.
Thank you, everyone, for coming to the meeting.
Sorry for the length
Do
of the discussion.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you hurry, you'll make it.
Thank you.
To be continued.
All right.
All right, so motion to continue to March 23rd.
So I have a motion and a second to continue to March 23rd. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And that's unanimous. Stands continued. Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Man, oh, man, oh, man. All right. Big rewards for speed here, fellas. Let's go.
Where are we? Oh,
We're,
343. Yeah.
Koi Pond. We're at 243 Koi Pond. 2421799, 243 Great Pond Road, restoration construction sequence from 1/12/22. Amy.
Okay. So the commission issued an enforcement order in December of 2021 for non-compliance with the approved plan and the order of conditions related to encroachments into the conservation restriction with hardscape and general layout that wasn't in line with the approved plan. Commission required that a restoration plan be submitted by March 1st. That was done. I provided a series, Taylor and I provided a series of comments on that first submittal. And so you have what you have before you in your packets. So in a nutshell, the current erosion controls are sufficient for the restoration work. Hardscape will be removed from the CR area. The koi pond will be dewatered, and they're estimating by 40%. Because what they intend to do is construct a poured concrete retaining wall on the west side of the koi pond, right outside the CR. The concrete retaining wall will be installed and backfilled. And one question I had about that is I just don't know how much backfilling and what that TOA slope would look like, because there's maybe a foot that they have to play with before they get back into the CR with any kind of backfill. They're going to install a boulder retaining wall at the northerly side of the koi pond, restore the conservation restriction areas to original grades, loam, seed, and jute mat if needed, install plantings, and some of those plantings will be in the CR. Taylor reviewed the planting plan, made sure that they were all native. They made some adjustments, so all of the plants are native. I pointed out the fact that you'll see on the engineer plan that there's the light gray outline of the approved layout as opposed to what's there now. The koi pond's different than what was approved, and I would suspect that if the commission is amenable to a different configuration of the koi pond that's out of the CR, that would be an after-the-fact modification. But I just want to make sure you guys know the patio is a little bit different as well. And I believe Bill Hall is with us this evening?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good.
I believe you did a good job recapping that. We also have Jay Barefield and Matt Ulrich here. So if there's any questions for them, the applicant is here as well, Steve Boyko. But Yeah, I believe that was a good recap. I noticed you mentioned on restoring the grades in the conservation restriction to the existing grades. I'm not positive on what the intent is for the retaining wall and the finished grade outside of that. But if that's what the commission is going to require, then we could make that happen.
Okay, thank you. Joe?
So Amy, you got me a little confused on, we know we have an approved, from the NOI, in the order of conditions, we approved the limits of a koi pond. They built something that exceeded that, and now they're proposing a retaining wall, structural retaining wall, to hold that area back. But you went on to say that there may be they may be considering some opportunity to reconfigure that, and that's where you lost me.
Well, they're showing the koi pond as built, which is different than the approved configuration. So that may require an after-the-fact modification.
Does it change the setbacks at all?
No, it's still inside, well,
But is this not coming in the form of an amendment to the order of conditions to
no,
begin with?
it's not. No, it's in response to our enforcement order.
Enforcement
We
order.
wanted,
But ultimately, we want to
a
amend
restoration
the order.
sequence.
Modify it.
To modify, yeah. So I think that if we do in fact modify it and this becomes the record plan, then even though it's different than what we originally approved, if it's now approvable, this becomes the record.
Okay.
As long as that's what we're ultimately gonna do. If we're simply only gonna act on the enforcement order all by itself and nothing to the parent order conditions, I think we'd be tripping ourselves up.
Gotcha.
I think we do wanna modify the order and make these proceedings part of that decision.
But they have not applied for an after-the-fact modification, have they?
No, they have not. They're responding to our enforcement order that
So
requires
can we initiate, we can't initiate one.
a
There needs-
sequence plan.
Sure, you can, under an enforcement order saying you shall file a modification.
I mean, I'm just asking procedurally. I understand what's in front of me right now, but I'm
Actually, I
reading.
think the original enforcement order said, build it in accordance with the
With
order
the approved
conditions.
plan.
All right,
It
so if this is what they're now proposing, if this is really what they want to do, then it does need to come in as an after-the-fact modification. Yeah, it does.
Okay, so,
And that's helpful, because if this is what they want, this is the one-step approach to getting that done.
Okay.
so, does
And
everybody agree?
I think the answer to backfilling on the west side of the proposed concrete retaining wall needs to be answered, because the sketch plan, it's not clear by the sketch plan how much backfill and, you know, how much does it chase back into the conservation restriction to support that
It
side of the
can't,
wall?
it can't chase it all into the conservation restriction.
Right.
That's the whole idea of our enforcement order. It was built such that it encroached into the conservation restriction, and our enforcement order addressed that and ordered them to comply with the conservation restriction setback, or limits. And if they're proposing a plan that doesn't comply with that, I don't think they've met the terms of the enforcement order.
So I don't know if anyone on the team wants to reply to that?
This is Dave Bearfield. Can I speak?
Can you hear me?
I can
Barely.
hear you now.
Barely. Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Much better.
yep.
Okay, great. Yes, this is Jay Bearfield. I'm the contractor who did the koi pond and part of this wall solution. So I can answer whatever questions you have regarding that.
So before we ask a question, let me tell you the expectation. What we want is that area from the conservation restriction into the conservation restriction, we want to be put back to the grade that it was at.
Correct.
And restored. And then
Correct.
from that conservation restriction up to the retaining wall, we want that to be graded in a manner that, you know, is manageable without having to have any impact in the future of sliding down into that restriction. So those are the things so how do we show that on the plan?
I agree, and that's the plan, is to make up that few feet difference with a hard line retaining wall and making sure that everything, including the footing, is set back behind that line. And then in the front of it, we'll just be restoring to the original grades with loam for the lawn area.
Okay, so what CSE has done is they've done a structural cross-section of the footing and the wall itself, and they just they're showing an arbitrary finished grade elevation. But we really what we really want to do is show on that they do some artificial line that says limit of conservation restriction, grade to be original grade prior to disturbance, and then to the right of that line, coming up to the wall, we want it to say. I guess we want an evaluation, because I don't know where that grade is now. Is it pretty much there, or is it a foot higher, 2 feet higher? Well, you got to show what it is you're going to do to get that back to some reasonable, manageable grade.
On the side that's on the conservation side, correct?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
All right, so this needs to come back in front of us.
So what we need is
After the fact.
well, no, what we need, I think, is to modify our,
Amend the EO.
right, so that they, before the next meeting, or in whatever time or fashion we need, they have to file a after-the-fact modification in accordance with all of the things we've been talking about.
Okay.
Sound like a motion to me.
So we're gonna issue an amended enforcement order requiring you guys to come back with an after-the-fact modification request with clarifying notations based on our conversation tonight.
Okay.
Because if you know, this is a different outline, different layout than what was approved, and if that's what you really want to move forward with, we have to review it under a modification, so.
Okay?
And again, without leading down the primrose path here, so long as they're complying with the conservation restriction, we see no other reason. They're still they're outside the 50.
Yes.
You know, it's
That's
all
right.
approvable.
That's right. Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
You bet. 121 Amberville Road. Restoration plan continued from 1/12/22.
Hi, guys. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Brokaw?
We can hear you.
Hi, guys. Okay, so I've been involved with this for just about a month now. I submitted a restoration plan on behalf of Mrs. Wong, and I got some comments back from Taylor, and I don't know if you folks have had a chance to look at the restoration plan. There is a certified vernal pool next to the property. Mrs. Wong, over time, put in a small walking path with pea stone, and so the plan involved basically leaving the pea stone in place, covering it with loam, put up some flowers, a native vegetation, flowers and shrubs along the pathway. We'd like to leave a little bit of a pathway there, and there's also some stairs that have been installed. I don't know exactly when they were put in place, but they're shown on the plan, and that's it. So, what do you think?
All right, Amy, tell us what you want, and we're going to move this right along.
All right, so,
60 seconds.
all right. So, you know, we provided our comments to Bob, knowing that the commission likely would not allow for the wooden stairs, stepping stones, grass walkways, gravel, or any kind of pathway to stay within the 25.
Right.
but they wanted to present it anyway. So
Okay.
it's not a lack of us trying to steer them in the right direction.
They didn't
okay?
follow your recommendations?
Right, that's
Okay,
right.
we're gonna give the recommendations. What do we want?
So before I get started, I just want to be clear, I was not at the prior hearing. So typically I would be not eligible to discuss it, but I was made aware of the meeting. I was given the tape. I reviewed the tape, so I feel I'm up to speed to be able to do that. Okay? Yeah, thanks for asking and trying to restore someone's labor of love, but the reality is it's misguided labor that we're simply not going to allow. So, we've never waived, anything in the 25, and this is not going to be one of those circumstances we'd even consider it. So I'm all set.
Amy, are the bleeding heart plants okay or not okay?
Taylor, can you answer that?
I can speak. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, so there was a species that Bob had recommended that has a native range up to about the mid-Atlantic, New York area, and then I provided 2 recommendations that are true natives to New England. So I would say those 2 would be preferable.
Okay. Mr. Maven?
I'm
not
not sure
sure
what
I
species
understand the
you're
answer.
talking about. Maybe I didn't get your email.
Amy's recommending that we amend the enforcement order to incorporate staff suggestions and require the 25 be monumented, wetland markers.
Yeah.
And the deadline is still a good deadline.
Yep.
But Jack's question was the
There was,
appropriateness of bleeding heart.
The
It's not a
bleeding
native
heart-
species and shouldn't be.
The bleeding heart
And
that they're proposing.
I didn't understand the answer.
Its closest range is New York, Mid-Atlantic.
You're saying it's not
Okay,
not
so
an
it's
indigenous,
not quite up to us.
not an indigenous
Just
species.
on the fringe, so,
Okay.
right. So there are a few New England
Correct.
options, and he lists them.
oh, okay, so
So just-
the applicant needs to choose one of the options that you suggested, Taylor?
Yeah.
Correct, yes.
Okay, let's
I
make that
have
happen.
provided 2 that are true New England. There's a lot of
That's
different
good.
species of bleeding heart,
It wasn't
many of
clear
which are
enough.
not even native to the U.S., but the 2 that I've listed
Are native
Um,
to New England.
that
I'm all set.
are native to New England.
Okay, thanks,
Okay, so we
Taylor.
just need to amend the enforcement order to incorporate the staff suggestions and require the no disturbance zone be monumented with wetland markers as directed by staff. And leave the deadline as it is right now for May 11th of '22.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. Thank you all.
Thanks, Bob.
guys.
40 Flagship Drive.
No updates.
No
work
update,
on
no action
Sentinel
necessary.
NOI.
Okay, 64 Nutmeg Lane.
Meter's running.
So do we move to continue that to the next
Yes,
hearing?
I mean, yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. 64 Nutmeg Lane, continued from
Uh,
2/23.
Now that we have an order of conditions ready
Later
for
on
you,
tonight, yeah.
I
Okay.
recommend you lift that.
So,
So revoke, remove, void,
Lift.
lift? So lifted or so moved to lift?
Second.
motion is second to lift the enforcement order. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. Let's go to decisions.
Okay.
Let's go to 64 Nutmeg Lane decision.
Okay.
Placement of markers. Didn't Greg tell us that depending on, he thought that they were gonna put a fence up and the fence would have the markers on it?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Accept that, yeah.
That was that was in the minutes.
Yep. That's what I got.
Okay, so,
So since we don't know exactly when the fence is going to go up.
It's gonna be,
Oh, hi Brendan.
hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, we're gonna get the work
So
done
we're
as
in
soon as possible.
deliberations right now. We can't
That's
take any
right, you're right,
statements or
I'm
testimony
sorry.
from them.
I'm sorry, Brendan, we're the hearing's closed, so,
You can listen, we're not allowed to take any data, we close this,
All right.
sorry.
all right? But you can just hang in there for a minute, we'll get it done right.
So, I mean, where we don't know what kind of fence they're gonna have, if there's gonna be a fence, we don't know, we could just change condition 21 to say that the placement of markers will be on the fence, and if they don't put a fence up,
Then,
they come back for modification.
all right,
Is that good? Good,
Yes.
good,
okay,
well done.
okay.
Well, just so, I mean, so, what if they don't come back for modification? So do you
Well,
want
we
in
could
there,
require-
if there is
Then
no
they go
fence
on
put
the
up, then they'll
fence.
put it on posts?
On posts,
Yeah.
okay. All right, I'll add that.
Refresh my memory, the original order conditions is still in place, but expired
Oh, for the subdivision?
for this lot development, for this
For
individual
the
lot.
subdivision, oh, yeah, well, the certificates of compliance have been issued for.
It has been for
Oh,
this
yeah,
lot?
full and complete for the whole subdivision.
This was Abbott Village, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep,
yeah, Abbott Village, I think, is
Yes.
the.
Yeah, all the lots came in as part of the subdivision.
Yeah, I think that
They
that's
didn't
done,
come in
that's a done deal,
individually,
I
yeah.
think. It only took 20 years.
Good with a $4,000 bond,
it's a lot of work.
condition 39, yeah.
I mean,
It's-
two
it-
additions, a
and-
patio.
And the grading up to the
fence,
25.
grading. I don't know, it's up to you guys.
Yep.
So they're not excavating anything out here, they're really, it's basically regrading and restoring
Right,
slopes, right?
right.
So that deep watering comment on 49, I don't even think pertains to anything.
Right, well, excavation for addition?
They're putting additions in. They're doing more than just that strip of,
Yeah, it's two additions, patio, fence, grading.
yeah, there's.
Yeah, I'm
erosion
just gonna
control.
guess they're far enough away for the dewatering, but what, I guess we leave the condition in there, but I don't think we need an erosion control monitor for that. But, I guess we should say, should dewatering become necessary, to contact the conservation office.
Okay.
Make us aware of it.
Yeah, that's a good route.
Which means we have to amend condition 50 as well, to be consistent with that.
Okay. Yep.
Let's just, if you're ready, 53, let's just assume there's gonna be a fence, because they're not clear, right?
Well, Sean said if there's no fence, then put them on posts.
That's
Yes.
Is
fine.
that all right?
Yep,
Yes.
Okay.
okay. Yep, that works.
What are they gonna be using for erosion controls?
Mulch sock.
Mulch socks,
Twelve inch mulch sock.
Is there is it a flat grade? They're grading, right?
Yeah.
What's the,
Looks good.
It's not more than 2 to 1, it's just,
question is, will the
with a sock,
will
Oh,
the
yeah.
sock be adequate if it starts to flow? Probably not.
right.
So it might need to be backed up by silt
Silt
fence.
fence. Okay,
Trenched in silt fence, okay, because
no, that's a good
if it
point.
starts
Good
moving,
point.
that sock is gone.
Yep,
Good catch.
okay, I'll add that.
Or if they don't want to use silt fence, they'd have to use,
Oh, I do have that.
you got it
Backed
in
by
there?
entrenched silt fence.
Okay, good.
I have it.
Done deal.
Um,
Done deal.
This order conditions can't get into this kind of detail, but I recommend that you, maybe you've already boned up on the construction general permit, the NIPSE's construction general permit that is now, the new one that's gone into effect
Okay.
February 26th. Environmental monitors have to be educated and certified and licensed.
Good. Good.
Yet to be determined how that
For-
happens, but it's
For
in the,
SWIP, but for SWIPs, not necessarily for,
for construction general permits, but if we're typically looking for the same thing as an environmental monitor, the industry is going to education.
okay.
So let's get
Certification and
the
licensing.
language from the SWIP, and let's incorporate it into our,
I'm saying not on this one, but I think you
No,
need to
not-
bone up on
Okay,
the new
yeah, I will.
regs. I can
Go-
send you a link to that.
going
Okay.
forward, that's an excellent,
do.
excellent
Okay.
suggestion.
All right.
That'll separate the wheat from the chaff.
Okay.
That was that was a wetland joke,
Yep.
That was a farming joke.
farming joke, all right. Although, I'm ready.
What about, I mean, these additions are right up at the 50-foot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're inspecting erosion control, is this 48? Or, prior to construction, we should have an inspection of the foundation
I think
locations.
I thought
I know, I was looking for
Yeah,
that.
51. Prior to the applicable construction phases,
That's
the
it.
closest corners of the proposed western addition and the western edge of the patio shall be surveyed and flagged, staked in the field with an adequate number of 5-foot offset stakes on the west side.
Okay. Yep.
Excellent.
Instead of having it, here's
Yep.
the
I
edge
just-
of your patio, here's the
I just
5-foot
remember this
offset,
is
'cause you know
one of
they're gonna
those-
get mangled.
Yep.
This is one of those ones that
Yep.
you could
No,
easily
yeah.
make a mistake.
No, yep.
So are there any amendments to this, or are we good with it as drafted? Was there
No,
one
there
amendment?
was some
Yeah,
amendments.
there was.
Yep.
You guys ready to move this? Okay. Move that we grant the orders and conditions for 64 Nutmeg Lane as drafted and amended.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. None, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Decision, 242-17790 Stevens Street, TTOR. You're 3 minutes away from being a push, Joe. Just saying.
Or we're gonna call you Pete Rose.
If nobody hits it, it's a push.
Filibuster controls the clock. I don't know.
Here's your opportunity to win or Tampa.
Okay.
Like it.
Is this order good for 5 years?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thought they were only good for 3 years.
Well, you guys voted to make it a 5-year.
Make it 5 years, so.
Because of the nature of the.
Okay.
Does the statute say we can do that? I know we discussed it, 'cause it's practical, because it is an ongoing.
Right.
Any comments? Any comments or
Hey,
concerns?
yeah, let someone else appeal it. No one's gonna appeal this.
Any comments, concerns? Questions?
So I have them investigating the Vernal Pool immediately.
Okay.
And then a draft vegetation management plan / O&M plan. He just didn't have time to kind of mirror the VMP, so he's doing that.
Okay.
So he'll give us some time.
Prior to
Okay.
construction.
Prior to, right?
Well,
Or no?
Yeah.
no,
Okay, all right,
No?
no later than May 2nd.
okay.
Oh, right. But it is in the prior to
And they're
construction
under a
section.
grant, so I don't want to.
Right, no, we agree.
I mean, we don't need the O&M until.
Right.
This stands on its own anyway.
I'm good.
Can we, I mean, I think the record stands for itself. We steered him towards the VMPs for the grid and the airport.
Yeah,
The reference to them probably shouldn't be in this order.
okay.
The record stands for itself. We told them to use those as
Maybe a
templates.
more-
We're,
Maybe a
yeah,
more general reference?
yeah, just by striking that out.
Okay. Right.
VMP plan shall be submitted too. Yeah, so the strike from that mirrors all the way up to shall be, and everything else is good.
Do I hear a motion?
Everybody has any more comments?
I don't.
I move we grant the order of conditions for DEP file 242-1779, 0 Stevens Street, Wire Hill, as drafted and amended.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion? I hear none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? That's unanimous.
Motion to adjourn.
I note that the agenda is complete.
I will second that motion made by Mr. Lynch.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. We stand adjourned, Mr. Producer.